So welcome everybody to our professor office hours today. My name is Emily Genoway. I lead the education team at Visible Body, and I am joined by Professor Tomer Kanan today, who is a professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He has been using Visible Body Courseware for at least 2 going on 3 years, and then prior to that, using Visible Body in other formats. He also taught at Malcolm X Community College in Chicago. So we're super excited to have everybody. I'm also joined by my colleague Pam Auckland down in North Carolina. And so we are going to let Professor Kanan, Tomer, to do a little introduction for about 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So as you have questions, it would be great if you put the questions in the chat, or just raise your hand. You've got a raise hand feature. You just raise your hand, I will unmute you and you can ask your question. Really the goal is to keep this very conversational and talk about Visible Body and teaching online and all sorts of good stuff. So with that, here's Tomer.
Hi everyone. As Emily mentioned, my name is, just in short, Tom. It's a lot easier. I'm the course director for AMP at UIC, and just a little bit of background on how our courses are being run. So we have, before even the whole COVID-19, we are running a hybrid course. So our lectures are already being pre-recorded and students coming to the lab. Now, one of the things that happened, of course, after we had to move online, the biggest question was, I think by now, most of the people that I know, my colleagues, we pretty much got the hands-on on how to deliver lecture online. But again, like I said, the biggest question was, what do we do with lab? Because so far, we are all got used to a certain way how lab is being done. And we know that we want it to be on campus. It's all about the hands-on. Also, it's specifically in our facility, we are using cadavers. So again, the question is, how do we do that? How do we still kind of deliver this experience other than starting sending cadavers to students' homes? So what I want to do today, I want to just jump right into it and just give you an example on how a lab can be still done online, completely online, and also making sure not to turn a lab into a lecture. So we still want students to be active. So what I would like to do is, in our facility, we're using Blackboard, but everything that I'm showing you today will run also on Canvas, on Moodle, so there's no issues with that. So what I'm going to do now, first of all, I'm going to share with you a screen. I'm going to show a couple of activities, and the first one, I'm just going to share what we use on Blackboard. It's called Blackboard Collaborate. This is the platform when we're allowing everybody to join in, and this is the live session. So give me 1 second. Here we go. So can everybody see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. So the activity that you see in front of you, this is activities that actually came from Visible Body. Before I start even to explain about this activity, here's the beauty of it. You can actually take all of those activities that come from Visible Body and you can customize it the way you want. And I'm going to show you, first of all, this activity is just kind of an introduction to the subject. And the way we want to show it or use it with the students as we do the lab is they have instructions that they also need to use their cell phone. They don't have to. We also have an option if somebody, let's say, have only a computer and doesn't have a cell phone in front of them. But I just want to show you what happened when we want to bring the experience into the student house. Like I said, they cannot take the models home. They don't have them at home. So how do they still bring them into the house? So what I'm going to do now, you see this screen. I'm going to share now a different screen. This time I'm sharing my cell phone. Okay, so it's going to look a little bit different. So give me 1 second. And you should be able to see my phone right about now. Do you see my phone? Do you see that screen?
Yes.
And this is live. Okay, so this is live. This is my phone. So now, as we do this activity, the students can open Visible Body, and that's what I'm doing right now on my phone. And I'm going to this AR mode, And if I take it and I'm just going to point it right on the structure, do you see that blue arrow just coming out right there? I'm just going to click on it. And here you go. I have this model right now, and this is live. This is my house. This is my desk right over here. And if you look, I'm going to go back to the screen, the activity, they had to identify different structures and also naming them. So they have to fill it on the sheet. Now, the students also have that sheet provided for them on Blackboard if they want to print it. So you can see the same thing, and it's working the same way. One thing you notice is that this paper is printed in black and white because it's very expensive probably for students to print in color. Nevertheless, they can do it directly from the computer screen, or if they decide to print it on a paper, they can still pull that image. Now they actually have that model in their home. And pretty much the type of activities that you can create is, I would say, the skies are the limit. They can, for example, we did an assignment when they have to put those different models on someone of their family members, for example. They have to create some kind of presentation or a PDF document explaining certain things. So it's a lot of fun and students actually being active. Now this is being done in the lab. So let's say students are doing this, right? They're filling this information. The question is, how do I know that they're actually doing it? Is there any way, for example, for me to ask them question right now live to see, okay, if we identify those structures correctly, what does it mean? How do we understand it? How can we apply that knowledge? So for that, at the same time as they are running this app, they're also going to have the courseware, which is the platform when we're assigning different homework assignment. So they're also going to have that open in front of them, and live, they're going to answer some questions. So now what I would like to do is share with you that courseware, because I want to show you how you can create different kind of questions, even though it might be just about maybe the anatomy, but you can apply to physiology and also pathology. So I'm going to share another screen. This is part of the lab activity. And that's what the students are going to open and see in front of them. So can everybody see now that courseware right now?
Yes.
So I want you guys to notice to the question that you see at the bottom. It's pretty straightforward, yeah? A little bit of applying that knowledge, but identify the structures that prevent blood flow from the right ventricle to the right atrium. And of course, they need to choose the tricuspid valve. What I would like to show you now is another question, and I want to show you that it's going to be the same question, okay, the exact same question. However, this is how we can take and make it a little bit more challenging for the student. So I'm going to use the same question. And still students need to answer that same question. Now, it's not that, it doesn't mean that they're going to get those two questions. This is just an example. But this time, in order for them to find the answer, they will have to dig in, as I'm doing right now. And by doing so, they perform a dissection, finding the answer, clicking on it, and submitting. And the last type of question, this is even a higher level. Now we're talking about pathology. So now they have a clinical case, and they need to find where the damage will be. So based on that, of course, they're going to be the chordae tendineae that they can click and choose. Again, same model like we used before, but you just change the question. After we do this in the lab and we give students time to do that, you have the ability right there at courseware to see how everybody did. And therefore getting that information right away and continue the lab. Now, in our labs, after we do those kind of guided activities, they're going to get another time between 15 to 20 minutes that they have another assignments that they have to do right now. And again, everything is live. And once they answer those, you can, of course, in the background, see all the answers and analyze it and jump back into the lab and continue and say, okay, for example, this is where I see everybody got it wrong. Let's go over that. And that's the way how we are doing the labs online. So this was like a short example on how we can take those labs and take it out of our comfort zone, let's say, and still be able to achieve lab. Now, For us, also, like I said, we were using cadavers. And this was a big issue because how do you deliver the same kind of experience? So we also have a dissection course. And what we did with that, of course, everything happened in the middle of the semester. So still with Visible Body, let me share with you another screen. And that's what the student did. Here we go. So there's another screen. Now you can see my app of Visible Body. And especially we were using a lot this part. And students were asked to create a presentation where they have to show how a dissection would have performed, which structures are going to be reflected, which structures, and explain the relationship between each other. And of course, at the end, they had to do some clinical presentation. But this is what they used. So what I want to emphasize is it the same thing like touching a cadaver? Of course not. However, from our point of view, yes, it is not the same, but still doesn't mean that if it's different, not necessarily is always going to be less. So that's why we are still offering those kind of labs. And this is pretty much my presentation.
Great, thank you, Tom.
No problem.
So go ahead, everybody, and start asking questions. Again, you can either raise your hand, post the question in the chat, or do both. All right, hang on one second. So no questions, just, oh, hang on one second. Here we've got one from Larry. So Larry, hang on, I'm gonna unmute you and you can ask your question. Go ahead, Larry.
He looks still muted on mine.
He does. And Larry, you might have to unmute yourself as well.
I see the question. The question is, does the AR function with Android phones? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Great.
That's what I needed.
All right. Any other questions, Larry? Well, we've got you.
No, not right, not offhand.
And it'll function on not just smartphones, but tablets. So Android tablets, iOS tablets. It's the way it interacts with the cameras. So they can use it also on a bit larger screen if they wanted.
Okay.
And then we've got a question from Brandon Glade. So Brandon, you just need to unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask your question.
So are you requiring students to be in lab during certain times, or I know it can be used at different times, but it sort of sounded like everybody was learning at the same time and you were able to say, was I understanding that correct, or is it all asynchronous?
So when we did it at that time, so let's say in the last semester when everything was changing fast, right? We wanted to be very cautious because we understand that also student schedule has changed. And therefore we did live, and that live was recorded. So people who could not attend, they were able to watch it later. Right now, I think for many places, still kind of the debate is, are we coming fully back in the fall? How it's gonna be? There's still a lot of unanswered questions. But for now, we are coming back in the fall with some restrictions. And probably what we'll have to do is to do a combination of having students, whoever wants to come to the lab, but this lab still is gonna be broadcast. But we have found that, in our opinion, the best way is not to choose one over the other. If you're already doing a session, broadcast it, like make it live, and record it at the same time, and then just make it available.
We had a hand raised from Dennis.
All right. Go ahead, Dennis. You just have to mute yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, everybody. Hi, Tomer. Tomer, can you tell me how to get to the anatomy of the heart? Because I was able to see it in the atlas, but I wasn't able to remove all the layers to get to the heart valves. How would I do that?
Absolutely. So let me share with you the screen right here. If you're in the anatomy app, the atlas, So if you go, for example, to systems, you can go to the circulatory system. This is the one that the road that I'm moving right now. And you can choose directly already a cross-section of the heart.
Yeah, and to never lose it.
Am I hearing voices?
Oh, I see.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, for example, how you can get to it really, really fast. So you just go to systems, and then you can from there choose different views of the heart.
Got it. Yeah, I just didn't see
Okay.
that one. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, and I don't know, Pam, if you want to share your screen as well, you could show
That's right.
some background.
No,
I like a weird background noise. I can't.
Yes, 1 second. I'm gonna,
Oh, thanks. And then E.
I don't know where the background noise is
We
coming
should take it back. You never took one, right? Yeah. No, I didn't.
from. Everybody is muted now.
Really, right?
Hold on 1 second. Let me just run through the list here. Okay, I think we are good. So Pam, I don't know, maybe just show a quick view of, yeah, like that was great showing the heart and atlas. But it's also in our anatomy and physiology app, and maybe show in courseware like how you can find the content. Just do a quick demo.
You guys can see my screen okay?
Yes.
This is the courseware page. I'm on the My Apps section of the courseware. So the first thing I'll show you is if I launch the anatomy and physiology app from just right there in my web browser, I come to the app and I can go to the circulatory system here. And then if you want to look at the heart, I can choose the chapter on the heart. So we've got these different views here. In the A&P app itself, we've got different ways you can interact with the content. This is kind of like our interactive ebook. So we have some nice physiology animations that are around the heart in here. We've got some 3D models that you can play with. So if you wanted to look at the location of the heart in the thoracic cage, right, I can go to this view. And then we have some pre-built views here to walk the students through the different areas that are important. And if you just wanted to select the heart or parts of the heart, you can do that. If I select the whole heart, I can say hide everything else, and I can just look at the heart here. Oops, sorry, a little too zoomy. You can still kind of dissect around here. And then in Visible Body itself, if you want to create those views for your students to see and guide your students to those views, you can easily create a course and you just create an assignment. You choose if you want to send them to that anatomy and physiology view or the human anatomy atlas. Since we were looking at the atlas and that was where you guys kind of spiked the question, I'll start there. And then you can search for content here, or you can search for the views. So if I went to system views, we could find the circulatory system. And then again, you pick which views you want to share with your students here, and then you can create that assignment for them. Any questions about that, or is that helpful?
Thanks, Pam. All right, we've got a question from Monica. So give me 1 second. I will unmute you, Monica. Okay, Monica, you are unmuted on my end. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi there. I had two questions, actually. One is, I like very much the idea of the students using or making presentations. Could they post those, or how could they share those, or even work on it together? That's one question. And the second question is, did you use any TAs in your lab? And if so, how did that work, and how did you use TAs? Thank you.
Yep, great question. So for the first one, yeah, the students were able to share the presentation live because, like I said, we're using the Blackboard Collaborate, and we just made a session, and therefore we gave them the, to be the host, and they took the class through their presentation. So this is how we did regarding that. Now, regarding TAs, we use the TAs that kind of being in the background, if you will, as the teacher, for example, is explaining or running the lab and doing all the activities. Any questions that students might have in the chat, this is where the TAs took care of that. And then we also, one of the things we did is specifically with the Blackboard Collaborate, you have the ability to create group sessions. So divide now the lab itself, let's say if you have 30 or 40 or 50 people, and you can create small groups. So each group was giving a certain task, and the TAs and the instructors were able to jump between the groups and listen to the discussion that each group is having. And then, of course, at the end, we brought everybody together. So that's the way that TAs were utilized. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so Nina has another question. Nina, I will unmute you. I think this will be good to see. Go ahead, Nina, ask your question.
Oh, you mean, hi, you mean the one that I typed up?
Yep, please walk through how to create a quiz and schedule it. Yeah, we can definitely do that. And is there anything else you wanted to ask?
Not that I could think of. I mean, it doesn't have to be obviously a whole quiz, just, you know, put in one, you know, fake question, and then how we set that up to be scheduled and timed for a certain day and time.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, you're muted, Pam.
Yeah, I'm talking and then I realize nobody can hear what I'm saying. Find the button. Okay, so I'm now sharing my screen and I'm unmuted. Can you guys see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So to create a quiz, there's a couple ways you can do it. The easiest way, if you want to assign it, is going to be going into your assignments and then create new assignments. You'll notice that we have the option to, again, assign from any of the individual apps. We also do allow you to upload your own files or link to URLs here for assignments, but I'm going to choose the graded quiz bank. When I do that, it's going to pull up our pre-created quizzes. So I can filter by question type, and I'm going to say I want to create a dissection quiz. And then you can filter by topic. So again, you can kind of specify where you want to go. We've been talking circulatory, so I'm going to stay with the circulatory. And I can even go as far as subtopic to the heart. And if I wanted, I could filter Bloom's levels. We focus mostly here on 1, 2, 3. You will find some higher levels, or you could create those. But you can then see we've got these quizzes here. When you select one, you can scroll down to the right to see what questions are in it. Once you pick which quiz you want, you just, you can clone it. Let's see here. And then name it. So I'm just going to keep it that way. And where did I go? And so here we go. And then I'm going to, why did I lose my button? Emily, I lost my button.
No, that's all right.
Let's see.
You can't break it. That's the good news.
Yes.
It's easy to undo and move through. I don't know, Tom, if you want to add your experience using the quiz bank compared to other quiz banks.
Done. Oh, create new quiz. And I don't want to do that. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know where I went wrong here. Let me go back to start. I'm sorry.
No problem.
My brain functions very limited at 4 p.m. So this is a user error, not an error of the system. So again, I apologize. Okay, I'm going back to dissection. I'm going back to circulatory. I'm going back to the heart. I'm choosing my quiz, and where I went wrong is I hit clone. I want to hit continue. So when I continue, now I name my assignment. So I can say heart dissection quiz. And here's where you can say the due date. You can pick whatever date that you want, and you can even set a time at the bottom. We ask if you want to delay release. So if it's due on June 25th and you don't want your students to see it until that day, you could delay the delivery so it doesn't show up until then. You pick which folder you want to put it in. You can give a point value. So the points can either be by point or percentage. I like to personally do percentage. And then how many attempts do your students get? So you can give them up to 10 attempts or unlimited. And then you can say, do I want to score their best attempt, their last attempt, or the average of their attempts, or their first? I'm going to give them their best. I'm going to be nice. And do you want to set a time limit? If you choose to set a time limit, we do have the ability in our class roster to accommodate students that need additional time on time quizzes. So you can go to your class roster, find that student, and set the additional time requirements that they need. Do you want to give feedback at the end of the quiz or after each question? Again, do you want to give feedback at the end of the quiz? How do you want it to show? And then you can give a brief description for the students of what, you know, the quiz is. This is a dissection quiz of the heart. You can add any information that they need to know. And then I'm going to send an email notification that'll email all the students in the class that the quiz has been added, if you would like to. And then you say, I'm going to publish it. Once you publish it, you say, okay. And now that's going to show up in your course. If you delayed delivery, it will not show up to your students until the day you selected. Any questions? Does that cover it? Sorry, I made that seem harder than it is.
No. Thank you. Tom, do you have anything to add about just assigning quizzes and just your experience on when you were getting started?
Yeah, I think this is also something that it's not just regarding assignments. It's especially what I think we notice is that students, we know whether if they read the book, and we're always hoping that they will read the book. But one thing is common, no matter to which book they are using or whichever lab manual, usually when they see the image, it's something like this. And I think this is kind of the ability to use Visible Body is, as I showed you before, the student is not limited by a picture that was given by someone that said, hey, this is probably the best way how to look at it. What happens if every student want to look at the structure in a different angle that makes sense to them? So the whole idea here is that they are not limited by that, that students can just choose how they want to learn the material in a way that make the most sense to them. And I think this is kind of the biggest advantage. And that's one thing that we noticed, because even when we're doing it in the classroom and students were using it, we noticed that they sometimes look at a structure that, for example, for me, didn't make any sense. Like, why would you look at it like that? But it made sense to them, and they knew it. And that was a big thing for us, like kind of a big shock, because most of us learned only how to look at things in a certain way. Add to that, we got a really, really big, I would say, a leap when we incorporate Visible Body with our dissection courses. And one of the things we did is, before students coming to the cadaver, they used to get what's called kind of a pre-assignments, pre-dissection assignments, that they're first of all kind of learning and guiding them through how things need to be done, and by using Visible Body. And then when they're coming to the dissection to the body, they also have the Visible Body right there. And sometimes they might get lost. They can also jump back. They have it right there in the fingertips and go back and continue the dissection. So that's really was a game changer, I would say.
Great, thank you. All right, Heather Cald has a question, so I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead, Heather.
I was just saying, this semester we had used the free version, and the students are paying for the version in the fall. Looking at some of these pages, they look a little bit different from what I had used in the fall. Is there a big difference between what they had access to with the free version versus the paying course?
So the only difference between the free version and the paid for version is that the students have the ability to download the apps when they purchase the version. So some of the things we might be showing you, like the augmented reality, is only in the Atlas app. You don't have that on the web version. That would be different. But the rest of it would be exactly the same, except the students now can download each app onto a smartphone or tablet.
Okay, and if they're in a 2-semester course, then they just need to purchase it once?
Yes, the student purchase for $49.99 will give them access to the courseware for 2 years. So they can log into the courseware account for 2 years. Any class that they take within that 2 years, they can log into without needing a new code. And then when they download the app onto their smartphone or tablet, that's theirs to keep. It does not expire. So they'll have that on their tablet for as long as they have the device they put it on.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Heather. All right. So actually, Pam, we had a request to just go over which button you hit instead of clone. I think it was continue. I don't know. Can you share your screen and just walk through that assignment creation or quiz assignment creation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So again, sorry to muck it up, but it also sounds like it maybe helped somebody else in there. So maybe somewhat good. So back to the graded quiz bank, continue right at the top right here. Once I select the quiz, it's just this continue button again on the top right, and then it'll bring you to where you can create the assignment name and those filters that you want to create. So sorry to, again, way easier than I made it seem a minute ago, which is good news.
Yes, thanks, Pam.
Yes.
All right, so Dennis, I'm gonna unmute you.
Yeah, are they doing any, like, is it in the, what time are they?
Oops, hold on one second.
Oh,
I'm just gonna make
okay.
sure
Hopefully-
everybody's muted.
Okay.
I think everybody's muted.
Oh,
Sorry,
are
guys.
you gonna have like procedure tomorrow?
I think we're good. So go ahead, Dennis. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries. Pam, actually, I don't have any questions right now. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, you and Tomer. And Pam, of course, yeah, I'm going to use this a lot.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. All right, so let's see. I think Susan is next. Just hang on, guys.
Okay, well, so how are you feeling?
There we go. All right, Susan, let me find you here. Okay, Susan, go ahead. Susan Marion.
Yeah, we used it for free this last semester because of the COVID, and I had several students who couldn't load the applications because I think internet might have been a little bit too slow, or I'm not real sure why. And I actually am trying to work with other faculty here at ISU and see if they want to purchase it. And I just had one faculty email me and say that he couldn't load it either. And most of my students were able to load it, but I'm just curious if that's a common issue, or when you buy the program and you have the app, then that's no longer an issue.
Yeah, I will say we did hear more frequently through COVID. One, we've had a lot of people in one place trying to use the internet at once. So right, people are learning from home, parents are working from home. Some people have slower bandwidth to begin with, but then you're slowing it down by more people being on it. So yes, we have heard that issue more in the last few months than we have typically heard it before. My best suggestions, or our best suggestions, are check the browser. So we work best, or I suggest Safari and Chrome, and Firefox also is usually good. We also suggest if you're launching it from your computer, they are large files. So I like to explain to students, when you're playing Fortnite or Call of Duty, it takes a while for it to load your board. So just have as much patience with Visible Body as you do with that, because it's still a large file. But the downloads do resolve that issue, right? Because instead of having to launch it on the computer, if their internet speeds are slow, they can just, do the assignment from their iPad or their phone. Now, a quiz does have to be done currently through the web browser. So they would have to log on for that. But again, once they kind of follow the steps of the right browser and closing out other programs they're not using, it might take maybe a minute or so to load, but the patience with it will, open it up and they'll get in. We haven't had anybody say it stopped them from doing it.
I actually had it stop me. I ended up, because I was trying to go through a hotspot and that just wasn't working. I tried all of the suggestions and I ended up getting a different internet provider because I think your minimum speed is 30 megabits per second or something like that. And so I had to get another internet provider, and that's what one of my students ended up doing as well in order to get it to work. So that was a bit of a concern. It was only a few students that was an issue. I'm more concerned about this faculty member because I'm thinking about purchasing this, and if I can't convince them that everyone can access it, we won't be able to get it.
We do have system requirements. If you're interested, we could send them, so that would maybe help.
Okay.
What the problem could be.
Okay.
But yeah, the downloads also definitely really help with students and instructors to have access at any time to the programs and the content.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I can just also add something to that regarding even the quizzes. Let's say you do want to run a quiz and you worry about an issue that, they have hard time to upload it. But I don't know if your school is using Blackboard or Canvas and you guys have that Blackboard Collaborate, that you have some kind of platform where you can.
Moodle.
Okay, and in Moodle, is there something that you guys can, broadcast or have a live session, I'm assuming? Right?
Yeah, well, we typically do our sessions via Zoom. But...
Okay, so what if you use Zoom and all of that? One of the things that we also did is we actually took that quiz and shared that screen of the quiz on Blackboard as a live session. So within it, you have the ability to create, as they go through the questions, you can create a poll. So they see the question, you are the one that's in control of the question. You're just sharing your screen. So that can be less bandwidth because it's just going through, let's say, one website, one Blackboard. Their computer doesn't need to upload all the component of the app itself.
Okay.
So we were sharing, so you are sharing the screen of the quiz and you have a poll and you can have it timed and all students need to answer and you guide them pretty much through the quiz, but you are the one that's running it for them instead of them choosing. You're just maybe creating like a multiple choice questions and you put some arrows or something like that or ask a question and they need to choose which structure it is. So that's another thing that we did. And that took away their need to upload everything on their computer. The only thing they had to do is just join the session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. All right, so I'm gonna go next to Stephen. Hey, Stephen. Hold on 1 second. Go ahead, Stephen. Nice to see you on here. You might have to, I think you might have to unmute yourself on your end as well. There you go. Hi.
Hi. I think my question was answered kind of indirectly, but I'll ask it anyway. I'm just wondering whether, once you make a quiz on Visible Body, can you actually import it to the quiz page on an LMS, like on Canvas?
So we don't have like a deep integration with Canvas right now. You could make a quiz and link to the quiz from Canvas. Tom, I don't know if you have a different way that you guys do it with Blackboard Collaborate that I'm not aware of, but we are working on a deeper integration. Canvas will be one of the early ones we released to along with Blackboard to make that more possible. But right now, what we kind of instruct instructors to do is when you create the quiz, if you wanted to, the quiz will have its own unique link, and I can show you what I mean by that. Let me share my screen again. Every assignment or quiz in Visible Body does have its own unique URL. So you could copy that and paste it into your LMS. And then our gradebook does have the export CSV functionality where you can choose your LMS and it's going to export our gradebook in the format your LMS needs it to import it easily. So a couple steps right now for that. We do have some things coming, hopefully early this fall, that we'll be able to share at that time. But for right now, that's the workaround.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Luis. It's your turn to ask a question.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Tamar, and for this presentation. And my question, I'm also thinking of using this kind of integrative lab type of scenario, but what I'd like, if you wouldn't mind expanding a little bit about how you broke down your time. How long of a lab, say, was it an hour? And how did, it sounds like you broke groups up for TAs and then reconvened. Can you talk a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, so the way that our lab was structured, actually we have 16 sections, and they were running by 4 instructors. And one thing we wanted to make sure that there is consistency among all the sections. So therefore, a lesson plan was pretty much given to all instructors and what they have to follow. So usually what we used to do is kind of, I would say, the first 5 to 10 minutes of the class used to be a quiz on a previous material of a previous session. And then it was, for example, the activity that I showed in the beginning, that was given between 5 to 7 minutes. And a lot of it, especially maybe I would say the first time we did it, it took a little bit longer because we want to show all the students how they can use the phone and how to use the AR ability. But then we usually kind of depend on the assignment, but we assign around, again, 5 to 10 minutes. And then when we did the part when the students need to go on courseware and answer a couple of questions, this usually was 5 minutes. Then came the big assignments that they had to do. And this is kind of what will be like their time in the lab. Depend on the site, but that was like, say, on average between 15 to 20 minutes, which also gave time to the instructor to go over the answers. So the entire session usually was maybe around an hour. But instructors also stayed beyond that if there were more questions and other things. So there was also things that we went over, especially regarding the dissection portion. So on certain topics, then when there was something regarding dissection, so we went over that with them. So, but I would say on an average an hour, and we gave everything kind of, it was breaking down between 5 to 10, or big assignments that were like 20 minutes.
Did you feel like you could interact with your students? Were they able to ask you questions directly? And I mean, instead of, well, it sounds like they were able to break up into groups and talk to the TAs, but how much interaction did you have with them personally?
So regarding me personally, this is what we did, and this is just because of our setup. So I wasn't the one that teaching lab, I'm the course director. And I have the other professors that they doing the labs. But what we did, me and another professor, every week, we did another live session just with us. So students can join and ask us any questions that they have. Okay. Now, in another school that I work at, this is where I did do the labs themselves. So I did the labs. So in there, it was interaction, and usually the lab, took a little bit longer. So it was maybe around an hour and 15 minutes. And the biggest thing is that again, maybe this is just my opinion, students still wanted to, even though they're at home, they wanted to feel that you give them this environment of a classroom. And that was really, really important for them. And also for me. And therefore, yeah, I did get to interact and ask questions, and always, even, paying attention to the small details when you do ask, hey, everybody, do you have any questions, something like this, give them time. Some of them want to type, some of them don't want to type, some of them want to open a camera, some of them don't want to open a camera. So overall, I think it went, if you take everything under consideration, I think they really appreciated that it wasn't just recorded, and it was live, and you can react to anything that they struggle with.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, so we actually had a question from, I think, Monica, about the individual questions. She remembers seeing questions, kind of on a list of questions. So Pam, could you show that? You're muted.
Okay, sorry, I mute myself so you guys don't hear dogs or kids. Then I forget to unmute. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that you can select individual questions. The first way is you can clone a quiz, right? Like I did accidentally earlier. And once you clone that quiz, you'll have the ability to edit the quiz. So if you choose edit, you can remove questions here if you would like. If you're not sure, you can preview the question See what it says. So here you can remove questions that you don't want. And then you also have the ability to add more questions. So you can, again, filter for the topic and subtopics, and then look at the questions here, and you can add questions one at a time to your quiz. So create the quiz exactly the way you would like it, and then you can add more questions or save the quiz. The other thing that you can do from the quiz bank is just create a new quiz from scratch. So this is you building exactly the questions you want without starting with one of our pre-built quizzes, and you just filter your topics and select just the questions you want to create your quiz from scratch. So that's also another way that you can select a question individually to create your own quiz. So you can remove and add to an existing quiz, or you can start from scratch and build it with just what you want as you want it.
Pam, there's a question. Are you in the quiz or the question bank?
I am in the quiz bank. So if I'm creating a quiz, I want to go to the quiz bank. If I want to just kind of look at different questions, review questions, or create a question from scratch, I can do that in the question bank. So sometimes folks like to edit the wording of our questions or create their own questions from scratch. You can do that here in the question bank. So you can edit the question at the question level here if you wanted, or you can create a new question from scratch.
Okay, great. Tom, do you have anything to add about your experience with the quiz and the question bank when you were getting started? Oh, Tom, you're muted.
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the things that strike me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. So if you don't mind, I would like to, again, share my screen.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my first impression when I started to use it. So you can see my screen right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. And let me just go here 1 second. So here I have my courses. And here's what, first of all, just kind of shocked me, because we were using other platform as well, other platform that comes from different publishers. And one of the thing is the ability to create a course. That's the first thing I wanted to do, right? So I just click on create a course and named it, let's say trial 1, for example, and putting all the information. And usually what happened in some other platform is, if I do now create a course, this is it. I don't know if you guys noticed, but that was it. The course was created. Sometimes in other things that we use, you gotta wait, or you gotta contact the rep that will approve the course, or somebody need to create you a course, or it takes some time. And that was my first thing. I'm like, oh wow, this is it. I don't need to ask anyone for anything. So that was great. And then regarding creating the question, I'm like, oh, this is really good, because I have really full control on how I want to do it. So I started to create a bunch of questions, first of all, in the question bank, and just creating and creating. And then the ones that I wanted to use for the quiz bank, that was great. One thing also, that ability that I can very easily, and I want to emphasize it for those who know, if you have a course in some other platform, and you want to add another instructor, this is usually, just from my experience, takes a lot. Here, it's so easy when I want to share the information and just add another person and make them the also instructor with me. So all of that, I think one of the things that Visible Body did really well is listen to all feedback and, you know, what people are saying regarding other things, other platforms, and really focus on simplicity. And that's why I like it so much. It's very simple. And it's also, for me, was very easy when I had to train other professors how to use it. It wasn't overwhelming. It was really easy. And usually everybody really got hooked the moment I told them, hey, this is how you create a course. Because everybody was expecting for at least another 10 steps. So yeah, that was like my first impression of the courseware.
Great, thank you. So let's see, let me just check the chat. I don't think we have any active questions. Anybody have any other questions or?
I did see one in the chat. Let me find it. It was about when we discussed pricing. So Tasha asked, to add on to that question, would you please walk us through the financial aspect of it? If students purchase access for $49, are there other costs involved to the institution, licensing, etc.? So to answer that question, we have different purchasing options. The first one would be that student purchase option at $49.99. And if courseware is a required component and your students are purchasing that access, there's no additional cost to the institution or to the instructor. Your access is free. We also provide training for the instructors. We provide pre-built courses to get you up and running. There's no charge for any of that. The other option is an institutional license where the institution purchases access for the students. And if you choose to go that route, there's then no cost to the student. So the students then get access for free. That pricing is based on the number of students you have in the program for a year, and that's something that we could connect you with your individual rep to learn more about if you're interested.
Thank you. Any other questions? We are happy to show you more of the content or really answer any questions you have. Let's see.
Oh, and there is in the Q&A, is there a way to lock their browser while they're in Visible Body taking a quiz? I don't know if I know the answer. I think the answer to that is no, but that might just not currently, but I might not know of something. So Emily or Tomer, if you know something I don't.
I don't know, unfortunately. I think it would depend. You would have to test it out. We don't have a lockdown feature in our platform, but
I know there are some instructors that will, with the purchase, use our questions in a different format. So they might pull our questions out and put them into Canvas or a different system that would allow that lockdown. And again, if you've got the subscription or your students are required to purchase, you have permissions to do that. But that is something that we can try to dig, more into for you and get more information on. It is something that's come up more and more, and it is on our radar. But currently, through Visible Body, we don't have a lockdown.
Okay. And then there's a question from Natasha: how to collect quiz statistics and scores? Please show the process.
So, share my screen again. And let me see if I can find you guys a course that has some students in it. Most of mine don't, but I think this one does. Okay, so when I go to the grade book, I've got all my students will populate here. If you have a lot of students and you're looking for just one student, you can find them by name. When you go to the quiz, there is this little drop down arrow where you can manually change a grade. You can modify quiz details. If they've completed it, you can view their quiz attempts so you can see what they answered on the quiz here. So let's say you have a student that missed a deadline and you want to extend the deadline for that student. You can do that by modifying the quiz details for that student. Let's say a student missed a question and you guys have a conversation and you decide to give them credit. You can do that by manually changing a grade. And if you want to see their quiz attempts, once they've finished, you can view the quiz attempts and see what people answered and if there was maybe a common theme to what they did. And it also tells you what time, like how long it took them to take this quiz, what time they took the quiz, so you can kind of see, did they rush through it or did they take their time? If it was a time quiz, was that time, pretty fair for all the students and how long it took them, type of thing. I hope that answers your question. We don't have like a deeper level into it yet, but this is, again, from kind of what Tomer said earlier, when we spoke to professors, this was really what they were looking for the details.
Great, thank you. Let's see, so I'm gonna go over, I think, to Nina. Just hang on one second. I lost my chat. So many windows. Okay, so Nina, I will unmute you so you can.
Hi, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
So Tom, or maybe any other participants who have used Visible Body for a quiz or a timed assignment, something like that, I am thinking if you have it in, say, Blackboard or your online platform, and you have like something like Lockdown Browser, you can give them like an allowance of accessing one link that you provide. For example, if I provided them a link to Visible Body, then that's the only window they're allowed to open while they're in that timed quiz or assignment. So that's my question for Tom or any other participants. Is that something that you have tried to, do for kind of locking down their browser? Is that something that sounds like it would be an option?
Yeah, definitely is. So for the past semester, since everything happened so fast, the school didn't make a decision yet, to purchase anything or to invest in anything. But now, again, based on decision, we tried different kind of things. I know there's like ProctorU and there's some other platforms. So we were giving like trial versions to play with all of them and see. And some of them are really good. Yeah, they can lock the browser, but that sometimes requires from the student to install something on their computer before that, and that might cause an issue. And this is like what we're getting from IT, usually like information about that. Some platform requires that the students will have a webcam. So you can actually see them, right, as they take, whether it's a quiz, and you can see if they are looking at something else. Again, I can just share with you one of the feedback we got is that you cannot assume that every student will have a webcam. But I can tell you that most of them, just from the technical perspective, it does work. The question is how to implement it, and if there is a cost, if the school is willing to do that, that's,
Well, I actually, so this semester I used Lockdown Browser, and my students who were having trouble installing it, well, when I required them to document that they had gone to IT and tried to solve the problem, guess what? Mysteriously, all of them had no problem installing it. So,
like always.
Yep. So when they say, "Oh, I couldn't do it," and you say, "Well, what did you try?" And so on, and then the problems go away pretty quickly when you ask them to actually describe their problem. And as an instructor, you cannot be tech support. You can't play tech, especially if you do not, which actually is one of the advantages, I think, of having your quizzes scheduled at a certain time. Like I tried to maintain as much regular schedule and as much regular structure. And so when we went online, I had classes on the same days and times, and students were expected to, unless they had some kind of work accommodations, which very few had major work accommodations that messed with their their class schedule. So in lieu of things changing and transitioning to online, I think it's good to keep a certain amount of structure, and especially for students who really would not want to otherwise be online. And so but to deter cheating, I found Lockdown Browser was a huge advantage, as well as having timed quizzes and exams, because if they were in a real classroom, they would be timed. They would only have a certain amount of time, and that also deters cheating. So anyway, so I guess my question was more so for those who have tried to use it with some kind of app like Lockdown Browser or ProctorU, is what have they found that works to to be able to access Visible Body and deter cheating.
I can also add to that sometimes it's amazing, but you know, whatever software that is there, one thing that we found just by trying, a student always found a way that nobody has ever thought of how to, and you're like, and there's really nothing that can be done in that aspect.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
they definitely will test you, and you'll be surprised time and again what they'll come up with. But I think that's why as many measures as we can put in place,
Right. Mm-hmm.
that it just, I mean, it's not only going to deter cheating, but also if they know that we have all these measures in place, then they are less likely to try so hard. You know what I mean? If they think, you know, my teacher's very vigilant about us cheating, maybe that in itself will deter the act of cheating for some.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, part of the problem with this student population are that the folks who tend to take anatomy physiology compared to maybe other biology courses tend to be very like high achievers. There's lots of pressure on them to go to med school or get into a nursing program or get into some other competitive healthcare program. And so I think that that this population is prone to cheating. I'm sorry to say that, but that I do feel like, having taught so many different biology courses over the years, I do feel like this is a population of students who I always have to be more vigilant about cheating and to deter it as many ways as I can.
Yeah, and Heather is chiming in that she likes the options to pool questions. So you can, you know, and there was also another Q&A post that you can actually create your own questions. So like Tom said, it's a simple program, but it's highly customizable. So yeah, you can really pool the questions. You can make a really big quiz and give every student a different random set of questions. So that's definitely an option to help with the cheating as well.
Yeah, like in other words, that question bank, taking the questions from the question bank at the beginning of it when you create it.
Yeah, so we can show you really quickly. Pam, Pam or Tom, either one want to show how to pool questions? And it'd be great. You don't have to walk through an entire, maybe you could do the pooling and then maybe Tom can do just a quick demo on how to create your own question, and maybe that we can end with that. It would be great to show kind of those customization features.
So I have to apologize. You may have seen my child come in, and now my dogs are coming in, and I'm a little bit out of sorts, but let me shut my door again. Joys of no camp and no school.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were asking about like pooling questions, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Okay, so my brain is done again. Let's select this quiz, right? So we want to create a new assignment, graded quiz. Now, Emily, I apologize. Do I edit or do I next on this? Like, bear with me because my brain is.
No problem. You can clone it. I think, actually, that's a really good question. I usually clone it and then pool at that point because I'm changing it, but there might be a faster way. Tom, what do you normally do if you use this function?
I usually clone it.
Clone it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm cloning.
Yeah, so cloning is another way of saying like, make it my own, I want to change it.
All right,
Yeah.
So I cloned and now I'm editing. Okay, so let me go back for you guys. I'm very sorry. I'm fired.
It's good because it's a good way to see, you know, it's pretty easy to just go back and forth and
Okay, so I clone the quiz, which now gives me the ability to delete it or edit it. So if I click on edit a quiz, now I can again rename it. You can update topics, subtopics, Bloom's level, and keywords if you want, but here's where you can say randomize the question order on or off, and here's where you can pull the questions. This quiz only has 9 questions, so I'm gonna say I only want each student to get 3 questions here. And then you can add more questions if you want. Again, you can still remove questions if you don't like them. And then once you're done making your changes, you will save the quiz. And then you can immediately assign that quiz if you want. You can go back to create another quiz, or you can just say, you know what, I'm done with my quizzes for now. I'll assign it later.
Great.
So just do that in the quiz bank under editing.
Yep, and there's always, we have a whole site of instructions on how to do these things. If there's a little question mark in the upper right-hand corner of courseware, you click on that, it's a direct link to our help center. And we have all sorts of just little articles on, you know, how to clone a quiz, how to change it, how to pull questions, things like that. So, yep, this is it. And if you just go to the instructor, scroll up a little bit, go to the instructor forum, it's down, just there you go. Instructor help, right there. And there you go. So, lots of things here. Yep, great. And then Tom, do you want to show, we can end on how to create your own question?
Yep. So can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is kind of one of my favorite things is to create the question, because this is each time you think like, how can I make it more intriguing? But if you start from the main screen, you're just going to the question bank, and you see here, create new question. It's simple as that. Now, this is the part that I really love. Which type of questions you want to create? Me personally, I absolutely love the dissection question. This is the cool questions. So after I choose the dissection, I just do continue, and now I can write the questions. For example, it's going to be identify the let's say left ventricle. Okay. Now what I need to do is choose the view. This is the part that you kind of decide how or what's the level of the question is going to be. For example, I can just choose. I can write here the heart. And I can go directly and just choose a view like that. Now I want from them, right? I want them to identify the left ventricle. So now after I chose the view, I need to choose if they click on that specific structure, that it will be the right answer. So if you see here saying select correct answer, I'm just going through the list of the structures, and I want to choose, for example, the ventricles. So I'm just gonna look for it. I can also just write left ventricle. There it is, which means if they will click on that structure, that's what will create the right answer. And you can choose, you know what, I'm also going to accept if they're going to click on something else, if you want to. Once you do that, just for the future, that will be easier for you to find those questions. You have the ability to put it under specific group and subgroups. You can at what level of Bloom's taxonomy is that we're all aware of. And I'm just gonna call it for now demo. This is it. You just created a very integrative question, and you can just save and preview, and this is how the question is gonna look like. So if I choose, yeah, I can have this question, I can do another one. I can now maybe edit to a quiz that actually I want them to use. And you can create as many as you want. This is how fast you can create those questions.
Great. We had a professor, I was doing a training yesterday, who was saying, you know, she's just getting up and running, and she was saying a very similar thing, that, you know, once you get started, it's actually really fun and easy because you're moving along pretty quickly. Most things don't take very long. All right, I think we just have one more question and we can wrap it up. Oh, nope. I don't think so. Hang on, let me just check. Okay, great, love that feature. Yes, it's pretty powerful, and there's a big bank of models in there. And like Pam was saying earlier, you can take our questions and really make them your own as well. So it's highly, highly customizable. All right, last call for questions. All right, I think that's it. So thank you so much, Tom. We really appreciate it. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and thanks, Pam, and thanks all of our attendees. We will follow up, but I'm gonna just post my email in the chat here. You know, feel free to email me if you want contact with your rep, but I think your rep will be in touch with you fairly quickly after this webinar. But yeah, feel free to contact us with any questions. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stay safe.